Mike Rhodes with a respectable, I know it was a losing record, respectable 16-17 record in his first year at Penn State, 9-11 in the Big Ten. Team played better than a lot of people thought. It was an aggressive defensive team like his teams at VCU, top 25 in turnover percentage. You bring back Ace Baldwin, but a lot of questions here. Christian and Nick joined by a special guest, Austin Mitchell. This kid is a hustler, still at Penn State, graduating 2027. I guess that makes him a sophomore. He not only writes for men's basketball for Penn State Rivals, he also is a data analyst for Penn State women's basketball. Kid does it all. Austin, great to have you. Can you tell us some reasons to be optimistic about Penn State? Because you look around the Big Ten, there's a lot of good teams. It's a super flat conference, it seems. Can Penn State be in the mix here?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And Penn State can definitely be in the mix. As you said, last year was a respectable first year for Mike Rhodes. 500 record both overall and in conference play. His first season in a Power 5 conference. Got to tip your hat to that. Wasn't flashy, but got the job done. That's kind of what you're going to be looking forward to again this year for the team. A lot of vets returning in the starting lineup. Ace, Dunn, Kern, Hicks, potentially Johnson could be in that mix. But that's 5 key guys returning from last year's squad that have a lot of experience now playing together that they kind of didn't have in previous years. Experience playing in Rhodes' system. And then a lot of new guys with some high potential. You look at like Yannick Konen-Niederhauser, Kashi Enze, Eli Rice, freshmen like Miles Goodman. So there is a lot of potential depending on how some of those guys play mixed with the veteran lineup. And the floor with a lot of those guys returning, I think, is a pretty similar year to last year.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think when you bring back a guy like Ace Baldwin, who's one of the best point guards in the league, and he's just been a Mike Rhodes system for so long now, like your floor is going to raise, especially with these other guys that you mentioned, like Kern, Hicks, Puff Johnson coming back. Like they're acclimated to the system now. They know what to expect year 2. But really talk about the importance of Ace Baldwin coming back, because he is like the head of that snake that ranked 23rd last season and forcing turnovers. And just shout out Mike Rhodes, because everyone's zigging in the Big Ten, but he's zagging. He's pressuring the ball, pressing full court. Like he gets after it on defense. So what does it mean to bring back Ace Baldwin this season?
Well, yeah, as you mentioned, Ace is an incredible defender. Penn State is a defensive-minded team, and he is kind of the face of that. Great on-ball pressure, smart off-ball defender. Players mentioned all offseason about how quality of a leader he is too. That he is kind of that like coach on the court, and that he's been helping a lot of the new guys get acclimated throughout the offseason. And so he's just really important in every aspect to the team. He helps them get stops. He can score the ball, and he is that mentor leader off the court.
So Mike Rhodes was at Rice before VCU, and you look at his career starting in 2015 as a head coach. He's had some fantastic defenses. Obviously, at VCU in the top 10 twice, in the top 55 times. Last year at Penn State was the only time he's ever had a top 100 KenPom offense. And I look at this roster, and Ace Baldwin's the only guy who averaged double-figure scoring in college basketball last season. We know what Ace can do as a creator, but from his days at VCU and Penn State, there's been a lot of times where there's just been a lot on his shoulders to create. Who do you think can take some pressure off Ace this year and join him in the double-figure scoring department?
I think the most likely option is Nick Kern. He's the guy that stepped up kind of towards the end of last year, especially after the departure of Kanye Clary. He kind of really showed that he can be a second guy at this level. He had a phenomenal game against Illinois. He was probably the main reason they were able to pull off that upset and comeback. Zach Hicks is a quality scorer. He is, a 3-level scorer. He can create in a lot of ways. He just kind of has to be more consistent. But those are 2 guys that can join Ace in that double figures club to help lead the Penn State offense.
Just for the front court, you bring in Keshi Enze and Yannick Konen. Honestly, don't know much about Konen coming from Northern Illinois, but what do those 2 guys give you, and can they square out the post?
Yeah, Conan's going to give you more of that offensive look. He's a guy that's kind of taken a step each year. He was expected to take a bigger leap last year with Northern Illinois than he actually did. But there's still a lot of potential there. Like he has the offensive skill set. It's just whether he's going to be able to actually apply it, now as a junior, and with going against Power 5 opponents is going to be much tougher than going against, on average, MAC opponents. And then Enze is going to bring you that strong rebounding and physical presence in the post. Limited minutes with Xavier last year, but he was one of the more efficient rebounders in the country. And Penn State was a team that really struggled rebounding the ball last year. They were in the low 200s in both offensive and defensive rebounding efficiency. So that's kind of where should be able to make an impact, is in the rebounding department.
So Conan Niederhauser from Switzerland, last year on a bad Northern Illinois team, they were outside the top 300 in KenPom. I see he exploded for 27 at the end of March 5th against Central Michigan, which was like kind of out of nowhere. Didn't have more than 15 in any other games. And what's interesting to me about him also, I wasn't tapped into Northern Illinois last year. He averaged 2 blocks a game in 19 minutes. So if he's a dude with that offensive ceiling who's blocking 2 shots a game in less than 20 minutes, why wasn't he played more? Like, what are his limitations? And do you think he can be a guy that plays more than that at Penn State? Or is it definitely going to be kind of like a platoon at the 5 spot?
I mean, I think he could be that guy, that starter. It just kind of depends if he is able to take that leap scoring like he did in the singular game against Central Michigan last year. That's the leap that I know Northern Illinois fans were expected him to take and be kind of that more consistent scorer because he has shown the ability. But if he does, he's definitely that 5. He is a quality big man inside because of his defense too. A platoon role with him, Enze, Miles Goodman is also very likely just because they are 3 very different types of players and all bring, different strengths. But yeah, so I think his just athleticism and shooting consistency were kind of some drawbacks last year for him. So if he can, become more consistent, then that's kind of where you're looking at as him notching as like the guy inside for Penn State.
What is the Freddie Dillon expectations year 1 with Penn State? Because this is a guy who, he only played 5 minutes a game at Tennessee, but I remember in the tournament he got in and like made some plays. Like the guy has upside and has a bright future. What can we expect from him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a 4-star recruit. He's going into his sophomore year. He's practiced against quality opponents and his teammates at Penn State and now, or at Tennessee and now at Penn State. So in theory, he's a pretty good ball player. It's just kind of that lack of game experience. He's very athletic. He moves very well. It's kind of just more of decision making and just kind of working through that jump from the high school to college level. I think the ceiling for him is being a quality backup point guard for Ace this year. Not asking him to do too much, just kind of managing things while Ace is out so he can take a break. And then, I mean, that ceiling is that 4-star recruit with lots of athleticism that can go out there and create plays. I don't know if that's going to be on the table for him this year, but in the long-term run, I think he's going to be a very good player. And if he can make that leap this year, that's only better for the Nittany Lions.
Do you think the expectation is that he's starting at the beginning of the season?
No, he'll be in a backup role.
So
who will be the starting 5? I actually had him in.
Kern Hicks, Conan, and who's the 5th?
Baldwin, Dunn, Kern, Hicks, and then that 5th, one of the 3 big guys that we discussed, and Enze, Niederhauser, Goodman. Puff Johnson could be rolled out there for more of a small ball lineup, create a lot of defensive pressure, be faster, quicker than other teams. But it'd be one of those 4 guys, probably the big guy for conventional lineups, Puff, dependent on matchup to create more pressure.
So Puff and DeMarco both came from Carolina, been around a bit, like just really, really solid energy guys off the bench. Do you expect growth for them, or do you expect them to kind of be in that similar role of just quality depth off the bench?
Yeah, I mean, Dunn will probably be a starter, but he isn't expected to have a big offensive role as a starter. I mean, I think Baldwin, Kern, and Hicks will be the 3 primary offensive guys. Niederhauser, I think, would get kind of be that 4th option. He's kind of like the glue guy there. Energy, plays good defense. He's a good decision maker, lots of experience. You kind of just expect him to go out there and do his job and let guys like Ace be the ones that are creating.
Me and Chris have talked about this now ad nauseam with everyone from the Big Ten, but like the Big Ten is just such a gauntlet this season, and it's stacked top to bottom. And Mike Rhodes had a respectable 500 season last year in the Big Ten. What's the key to ascend in the Big Ten in year two?
I mean, it's just staying consistent throughout the year. There's going to be lows, there's going to be highs. Managing like headspace throughout that is going to be tough because it's every single game is going to be physical. These are like Big Ten is going to play physical basketball. There's new additions: Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA. They're not going to be any different. They're going to play tough physical basketball every game. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be, just downs to the season. You got to be able to find a way to fight through that. I think having quality depth is going to be big. And that's kind of a little bit of a question mark for Penn State is their starting lineup. Projected starting lineup is very experienced, but their bench is not. It's a lot of young guys like DeLeone that, should be very good players at some point in their careers, but they don't really have much playing time yet to know how consistent they're going to be able to perform.
You've mentioned Miles Goodman as a freshman that could definitely be in the fold here, 4-star recruit, 6'11". The other three freshmen, all 3 stars outside the top 200 on 3, Hudson Ward, Dominic Stewart, Javen Carter. Do you expect any of those guys to factor in this season?
Hudson Ward, I could definitely see playing a role. I think he's very underrated as a prospect. He kind of jumped onto the scene late from Canada, but he's a quality all-around player. He's got the size. He can play, a lot of positions. As a lengthy wing, can play the 3-4, maybe down to the 2. Stewart and Carter, I think, are probably more long-term projections. Although, potentially they could find themselves up in that backup guard role with DeLeone. Stewart's got a really nice jump shot. Carter, a really nice jump shot. And so that could be a role too. If they get hot hitting from deep early in the season, there's not a lot of shooters in that starting lineup for Penn State. They could carve out a role for themselves coming in off the bench to knock down triples.
Last personnel question for me is Eli Rice, sophomore, played 10 minutes a game, averaged 4 points in Nebraska, tournament teams, like really respectable stuff. What's his role going to be with Penn State this season?
Yeah, I think he's going to be the number 1 wing off the bench, coming in for Nick and Zach. Just kind of a 3-and-D, hit threes, play good defense. Pretty similar to his role last year in Nebraska. The potential to be one of those guys is there, like to be a good player. He's just got to be able to put it together consistently. But yeah, kind of that 6th, 7th man off the bench, knock down triples, play consistent defense. Again, I think the offense is going to run through Ace guards, so kind of just not doing too much and letting Ace do his thing, but being able to provide a quality second or third option when he's on the court.
So, I mean, Ace has been around for a while, and the relationship he has with Mike Rhodes is obviously special considering he's stuck with him this whole time. Can you tell us about the impact of his leadership and the role he's played this summer in, bringing this group together and, maybe his expectations for a season where it is a lot of younger and more unproven guys, but with him leading the way and with defense being the mentality, I assume he's confident that Penn State can definitely make some noise. So just tell us more about his leadership on this team.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that believes that they can make the NCAA tournament. Ace is no different in that thought process. He thinks that they can be, a quality opponent in the Big Ten. He's aiming for a Big Ten championship. And then a lot of the guys have been very outspoken about Ace's leadership. When I came up for the first media day, that was pretty much all anyone could talk about was how great of a leader Ace had been throughout the offseason. It's pretty much every other guard besides him and DeMarco is an incoming freshman or sophomore. So not a lot of experience there, but he's been helping them get acclimated, and you can tell that they've really appreciated that. So I think his leadership has meant a lot, and it'll be big in proving or providing somebody that can actually back him up when he is comes off the court for some rest. Because he wasn't able to come off the court much last year after Kanye departed, and they did struggle with him off the court. So that leadership should be big in, being able to help him take some breaks here and there.
Any last thoughts from, things you've heard around being around the players this summer or media day or anything? Any final nuggets for us?
Not much that we haven't already covered. This is a team that, they have high expectations coming off of a fairly strong year for last year for having a first-year coach. They seemed much more put together like as a team this year rather than individuals. So I think the higher ceiling is there of potentially being a better team in the Big Ten, making the NCAA tournament. And it's just really going to depend on that consistent scoring outside of ace and, playing good defense and rebounding from the post that they kind of lacked outside of Wahab last year.
What's crazy about the Big Ten is we've done most of the Big Ten by now, and like every team could be good. It's nuts. But Penn State is definitely in the mix there for me now, thinking about how good they can be defensively. And, there's a lot of young guys with upside. You never know when there's question marks like that. So thank you so much for joining us, Austin. Hope you enjoy the rest of football season, of course, in Penn State, and hope the basketball season gives you something to root for as well. So thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.